Something beyond comprehension is happening to a little girl on this street, in this house. A man has been sent for, as a last resort, to try and save her.
So, why must it be below freezing when you're possessed by a demon? What's up with all these really cool priests that are just running around this movie? And is the power of Christ really all that compelling? We're going to answer these questions and more on today's episode, where we discuss the highly revered and influential horror classic, The Exorcist from 1973. Now, Joe, you've seen The Exorcist before, right? Oh, wait. Nope. No, you haven't. That's right, because this is the Uncultured Cinematic Universe, the podcast where two friends show each other movies, shows, or anything else that they absolutely need to see or experience. I am your host, Justin, and with me in the Uncultured hot seat today is Joe. Say hi, Joe.
Justin, that was a masterclass in line reading and improvisation, I have to say.
Well, that's what I do. I've been practicing.
Hi, everyone.
Joe,
Was that the
watched,
actual trailer to the movie that we just watched?
I think it was one of the original trailers, or it could just be a fan one. But I mean, it's really low quality. Like that's only like 240p or whatever when I
Oh, it
downloaded it.
works.
So it works, but yeah, it is spooky. The
Yeah.
flashes of the basically not even really shots from the movie. It's just like still frames and flashes, but like I
hmm
think it's super effective.
Yeah. I can answer the cold question for you if you want.
Okay, yeah, do it. And why does it have to be so cold when you're possessed?
Okay. Do you remember this time last year, actually, when we were talking about Over the Garden Wall
Yes.
and how it was kind of like Dante's Inferno-ish, like
Okay.
different levels?
Right.
Did you ever read Dante's Inferno in school or whatever?
I no.
Okay. So it's a story about this like guy in ancient Greece or Rome. Don't come after me for that one. And he's telling a story about him going through the different levels of hell. That's how you get like the 7-layer cake that is hell or something like that.
Delicious.
And at the very bottom is Satan, and he's not in like a fire pit, he's trapped in ice. So like
Okay.
Dante pictures like the core of hell as like cold,
Super cold.
not hot, which you kind of think like, would that be worse than hot or better? I don't know.
I would much rather freeze to death than burn to death. So maybe it's like a little bit of sympathy from the devil. But that makes sense because the beast from Over the Garden Wall is, encapsulated in snow on the last episode, the last scene. That's really exciting. But that is a great transition into the theme of this month. We are in October, and this is our spooky season. We have come back around to it. This is our second time around doing spooky stuff, and I took the reins for the first go round of this month. And Joe and I, ever committed to the bit, we went and saw The Exorcist in theaters for its 50-year anniversary. They brought it back to
some
theaters.
some would say the spookiest movie. Like this is often lauded as the scariest movie of all time. Would you say so?
It really is. It is heavily lauded as that because of the not only the subject matter, but like sound. editing that they did, visuals that they were able to creatively, capture and give that kind of like subliminal messaging, some of that creepy flashes without too many jump scares,
Hmm.
and just like really pushing the envelope of what you can show on screen for 1973's audience.
I really wanted to get to talking about like what they were able to do with, I'm not going to say like limited technology, but like different filming technology in this
Yep.
case. Like a combination of practical effects and like it looks like they were using like film overlays. Like, is that what it was? Basically, where like they're putting one thing on top of another
Yeah.
to create an effect
Mhm.
that is used so effectively in this movie. And then obviously, the sound is kind of what makes this movie for me.
Which I'm super glad that we got to see it in theaters and that they did it right. Because in
Hmm.
some points, it is just so loud at some
Hmm.
points, but then other parts where, like, we heard it in that trailer of, like, it's just the rattly breathing of Reagan, and
Hmm.
it's so chilling, and it's so terrifying just because it's I don't know, it elicits it's what you can't see, right? Because you can hear her breathing outside of the room or when they're even in the room and they're kind of focusing just on the priests and you know that she's just there, right? Yeah, so they broke a ton of molds and they tried so many different things practically with this movie, and they accomplished a lot of stuff that I'm really excited to get into. But first, Joe, I wanted to get into, just your overall first impressions. Did you enjoy seeing this movie in person? Did you have a good time? Yeah.
I did. I did. To kind of set the stage, this isn't the theater that we usually go to here in Atlanta to watch movies.
No.
The only place that was showing The Exorcist is kind of, it was farther away from my house than usual. I had never seen it before. It's kind of off the highway, and we show up and it's like a practically empty parking lot and it's just this massive theater kind of in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
So you already get the vibe that it's like the Shining levels of haunted. And then you walk in and it's like, have these workers been here for 100 years? um
Yeah, that's exactly what it felt like, right?
yeah, yeah,
It
so it's setting it up perfectly.
Yeah, I when I got home, Ryan asked me, she's like, "So was it just, like, bustling with people, like, wearing shirts? Were they so excited?" I was like, "It was literally me and 2 other people."
Yeah, there was a
And
little boy like pushing a hoop through the hallways or something like that.
Yeah, with a stick. Right, and then, like, 2 kids playing jump rope, sing in slow motion,
And then
singing,
they disappear.
when we turn around. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was really creepy. I think it added to it. I think that would have been better if we saw it at night because we saw it at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
I know, we
Um,
come out and it's daytime.
Daylight. Yeah, very disorienting. So I think it all played to it. Um, but overall, like, with the movie, like, did it live up to the hype? Because like you said, there's this, unsaid thing about this movie. Like, it is always in people's minds of just like, "Ooh, that is the scariest movie of all time," kind of a thing.
Mhm.
What did you take away from it when you saw it? After you saw it?
I have probably, like, an interesting, uh, like, way into this movie because
Let's do it.
I had heard so much about it. It has such a reputation that, like, just through society osmosis, I just know a lot of the key points of this movie. I know about the stairs. I know, like, obviously the iconography of what Reagan looks like when she's fully possessed.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
like huge as part of culture, right?
Mhm.
And so those parts weren't shocking to me, but I was interested more in like the story of the movie that I didn't necessarily know before, and like some of the some of the plot points that came before the actual exorcism I was new
Mhm.
to.
Yeah.
And so it was a mixture of like the most shocking elements weren't as shocking to me in a
Right.
way.
Right.
And I kind of thought, like, is this just because like I've been around
It might
HBO and
desensitize.
stuff,
Yeah.
like I the internet these days, I see this on TikTok all the time,
Mhm.
like,
Mhm.
but I also fully recognize that there are probably certain parts of this movie that must have been insane and ground shaking in the 70s, right?
Definite pearl clutching for sure.
Yes.
I have a whole segment about like the impact of the just society at large and the people going to see the movie in the theaters, like
It's
what happened to them.
I came away thinking that it's very cool that this movie exists. Like,
It is.
this is kind of badass.
It's super badass, right? at multiple points throughout the movie, I'm just like, man, this movie fucking rips. This
Yeah.
rules.
Like, how did they get away with any of this?
And you know what? You got to ask yourself that. So before the movie started, there was a little preamble from some guy. I don't remember who he was. He said his name. It was just some
He's
schmuck in a
the
suit.
owner of the movie theater.
Welcome to my humble theater. We play Nickelodeons and things
He
here,
does the
kids.
thing where, like, on screen, he backs away out of the screen, and then he really shows up in person in front of us.
Okay, like Jurassic Park.
So
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
It was some sort of like producer guy giving like a before the movie talk.
Yeah, talking about, it's been 50 years, which again, mind blowing that this movie is 50 years old.
Yeah,
And
it looks
still,
good.
it really does. That's the power of film, when you make a movie on film.
It's the power of Christ.
It is sort of compelling. So yeah, this guy, producer guy, given the background, of its impact, of its importance, that kind of stuff. So it kind of gave just a little bit of backstory, which I'm sure you probably weren't privy to. But I thought that was a nice little touch that they threw to it. And then we didn't stay for it, but at the end of the movie, they were doing like behind the scenes stuff, which would have been really cool to see. But by then it was almost 7 o'clock in the evening, and we got places to be.
It's a
We're
long
busy.
movie.
We're very busy. It was a long movie. So this movie is heralded as kind of obviously the one of the scariest movies of all times. It's groundbreaking, but it's also a slow burn. Um, it doesn't really pick up until like the last fifth of the movie. Prior to that, it's just this slow, steady creep. You think it's gonna be more about the possession and more centered on Reagan and the family, but this time around watching it, I was really surprised that the more of the focus is on the title character, the Exorcist, and it being Father Karras.
Yeah.
It's his story, really.
I did have some notes about like the pacing of this movie. Like you're saying, like I didn't expect the exorcism to be so far at the end, and it lasts probably like 20 minutes at that point. It's like very heightened, but it takes you a while to get there. Also, I thought Max von Sydow was going to be like the main priest in question just from hearing about this movie. He's in like the first 10 minutes of the movie, and then he is gone for the next like 2 hours.
And then he shows up at the end. And
I
then
was
it's
kind of
ice.
checking my phone because we were like the only people in the theater besides like two other people. So I was kind of like pulling it out of my pocket and just checking timing. And I was like, it's been like an hour and a half of no Sydow.
Where'd he go? Where's Max? Yeah, and then he shows up at the end, and then he's only on screen again for another 10 minutes, and then he's gone. And then the movie's over.
50-year spoiler alert warning. He dies.
He dies. Crazy stuff. Yeah, let's transition over and talk about some of the overview and get some stats and things like that. So this movie was released, and we talked about this, December 26th, the day after Christmas, 1973.
Merry Christmas, Susie.
Come on down. I got you tickets to the theater. Let's go, kid.
Bring your new dolly.
Like, what a lovely day after Christmassy family flick. Just what a wild thing to do for the studios to just like this very satanic, horrifying movie. Let's put it after Jesus's birthday.
Just the fun religious parallels you can have with scheduling. Those people know how to like have a little joke. Like Christian season's over. It's our time now.
Yeah, it's season of the beast. This movie was directed by William Friedkin. They talked about Friedkin in that opening kind of thing that we talked about already. He'd previously done, what was the movie?
French Connection.
The French Connection. That's what got the studios interested in him. They loved what he did there, and he was nominated and all that kind of stuff for that. So this movie is also based on a novel written by William Peter Blatty. Now, Blatty was, heavily involved. I know, right? What a cool family last name. Involved with the production and oversight and screenwriting and all that kind of stuff. So the events were recorded. The novel, was inspired by a real life 1949 case about a demonic possession and exorcism. It was called The Exorcism of Roland Doe, an actual 14-year-old boy. The events were recorded and documented by an attending priest, and the subsequent supernatural claims that surrounded this event were used as certain elements in the novel. So One of those typical horror movie tropes of like based on true events kind of a thing before it
I
was a trope.
I think he made the right choice with the title in this case.
Yeah, just The Exorcist, not like the exorcism based on true events. Yeah.
The
Uh,
Exorcism of Roland Doe,
yeah, like who the fuck is rolling?
rated R.
Coming to a theater near you. So this movie stars Ellen Burstyn as Chris McNeil, Jason Miller as Father Karras, Max von Sydow as Father Marin, and Linda Blair as a young Reagan McNeil. Now, Ellen Burstyn, uh, you know her, you love her from. I know her from Requiem for a Dream, and one episode of SVU, I think. That's my connection with her.
Those are
Uh,
her big ones.
those are her big ones. I think she's fantastic in this movie. She really carries it really well of being like this upper echelon socialite kind of a person,
Hmm.
but her descent into madness, or not even madness, but just like despair by the end of the movie.
Just God bless her personal assistant throughout this movie. She really sticks with the family.
The
Like I
whole
would have
time,
been gone.
yeah, across the country immediately.
Yeah.
So Burston was a relative unknown, but uh, blessed be. She was a relative
Gross.
unknown. Thank you. But she pleaded that her Catholic background suited her well for this role. So they're like, "Fine, you know what? Let's do it. You can spin a good yarn." Audrey Hepburn and Jane Fonda were also considered for that role.
Ooh, that would have been, those both would have been interesting.
Right? But I'm so glad that Miss Burston was a part of this because she fucking rules.
Hmm.
Jason Miller as Father Karras, Jack Nicholson and Paul Newman also considered for this role. Super weird, right? Jack Nicholson, I think, hot off the heels of a One Who Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, or just before. I can't remember. So
Hmm.
like young, weird, creepy Jack Nicholson would have been strange. But again, like pulling on the strings of the studio and their background, Jason Miller actually studied to be a Jesuit priest for 3 years before having a similar spiritual crisis like Father Karras. So again, the studio was like, "Fucking all right, yeah, sure." Uh, you know, freaking liked his chemistry with Burston. They did a screen test, as well as his dark, good looks, haunted
Okay.
eyes, and quiet intensity and low,
Okay.
compassionate voice.
I do want to talk about this
Let's talk
because
about Father Karras.
you in the scenes that he has with Burston, where
Yeah.
he is the priest coming to like help her daughter, and they're both kind of like one-on-oneing with each other to figure out how to get this demon out. You kind of want them to kiss now.
You absolutely do. Like, should this be like plot B, plot C of just like, are we gonna fall in love?
It's Fleabag-esque in terms of the
Mhm.
hot priest.
Yes, if they were to remake this movie today,
They
it
did
would.
not actively try to make this guy bad looking, I will just say.
Yeah, I mean, they made him look like or they say that he looks like a boxer and all that kind of stuff, and
Yeah, he
he's
looks
just
like Rocky.
he's very charismatic. But like again, like I mentioned at the top with my asinine questions, but like all the priests in this movie are like good looking and like super cool. They're all drink and fucking smoke.
Yeah, I think a couple of them. So the head bishop guy that looks like a Star Wars villain, and then like his priest friend,
Yeah.
are actual priests in real life. I did like some
Oh, that's cool.
Wikipediaing on the movie. Like they just pulled actual priests,
Yeah. You there? You
and they
busy?
did great.
Yeah, they did a great job. So like the priest that's like playing the piano at the party or whatever. That
Yeah,
that priest. Yeah. Super cool. Yeah, not a bad looking priest in this flick. Super cool.
even
Um,
von Sydow is like I I got to talk about his age in this because
makeup. Makeup.
this movie's 50 years old.
Yeah.
He was in Game of Thrones like 5 years ago.
Yeah, he was also in The Force Awakens.
He is no longer with us. He
Yeah.
passed away when he was in his 90s, but still, like they make him look like 70 years old in this movie. He's probably like mid 40s.
He's the same age as Ellen Burstyn in the flick.
That's
Ellen Burstyn
so
or
crazy.
Jason Miller, one of them. I think they're all about the same age. But
That's
yeah, they
insane.
aged him up, and they did such a good job with that. Like it took many hours to get him into that convincing makeup, but like it's incredible.
I
Uh,
spent like the first 5 minutes of this movie while some crazy stuff was happening in Iraq or wherever, like doing math in my head about Max von Sydow's age and like
It's,
how that could possibly work.
it's like he's like 70, maybe 60
I was
here.
like,
So like, is
was he
120?
125 when he died?
Yeah, little known fact. Max said I was 125 when he died.
It's like the
Amazing.
oldest known person ever.
Yeah, it's a sleeper fact. No one knows.
Hmm.
All right, so let's talk about Linda Blair for a second. So this role was famously difficult to cast because of the subject matter that we won't talk about.
Oh goodness.
Some things were just too difficult for families and young actors to stomach. Denise Nickerson, who played Violet Beauregard in Willy Wonka, was considered, but her family looked at the script, took one look, and said, absolutely not.
They got to about page 20 and were like, she does what?
With a what? In her what? Absolutely not. Let's go. Like, my child.
She says what?
The things, it's like the kids say the darndest things. Jamie Lee Curtis was also not allowed to audition because her mother, Janie Lee, read the script and said, you cannot do that. So again, like what a weird world, right? We could have had a Jamie Lee Curtis or the Violet Beauregard in this role, but I think Linda Blair, again, a relative unknown, her first big breakout role, take on such a difficult role and so compelling. Crazy stuff, right?
She, I mean, is aptly rewarded for this role. She got major awards attention. I think she won a Globe and was nominated for an Oscar.
Yeah.
A lot of the cast were. So this was like, I'm sure we'll get into it, but this was like probably a breakout hit in terms of horror at the Academy Awards.
Right. Yes. Which we'll get to that here in a second. So let's see.
Very concerned for Linda Blair in this movie, just both in terms of her character and like as a child actress. I hope she did all right during this movie and they made it okay for her.
I hope so too. Like this wasn't permanently scarring.
She is still alive. I did some digging.
Yes, yeah. I don't know if she shows up in the new one or not, but I know that Ellen Burstyn does.
Yes.
We're going to share a hilarious quote that I found on Instagram to our story soon. So this movie had a budget of $12 million, incredibly over budget, which we'll talk about later. But the box office for this flick, 441.3 million, setting so many records.
Not too bad.
Like so many, like selling out entire theater records, that kind of stuff. Famously, there were lines of people waiting outside in the freezing cold for hours to see this movie when it released. So like really strange, right? 2010, in 2010, this movie was, the Library of Congress selected this film for preservation in the U.S. National Film Registry as being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant, which
I'll say
it hits all of those marks. And yeah, like you mentioned, this movie like went to fucking bat at the Academy Awards and Golden Globes. Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actress, Best Supporting Actor, Best Supporting Actress, Best Screenplay, Best Art Direction, Cinematography, Film Editing, Sound at the Academy Awards. They took home Best Screenplay. Miss Blatty took it, and Best Sound.
That nothing makes more sense than that.
Yeah, sound in the screenplay.
The sound in this movie. I mean, we've talked about the importance of sound. I think was it The Social Network where we were talking about Oscars and how it won sound and like how the sound and like particularly the score in that movie are kind of what makes it.
Yep.
I think with horror as a genre, like sound is kind of almost more important than the visuals, especially in this movie where there's so many scenes where they're just kind of like we were talking, like they're just talking downstairs and there's crazy shit happening upstairs that you can only hear. Right?
Yeah.
And so they're like, how do we get across that this is the scariest thing you've ever encountered without actually showing it?
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, like it definitely plays to it really well because a lot of people, that's something that people don't think of. What makes this movie terrifying. They think of the visuals and things like that or the subject matter, but like the sound is the thing that like sticks with you and gets into your brain. Those are the things that you carry after the fact. So yeah, so that's kind of the high and low of the movie. We already played the trailer, and so last time we waited till the very last second to do a little cheers and talk about our beverages. Let's go ahead and do that at the top.
You are just checking the boxes.
Hey, man, I don't want to miss anything, and I know that we're up against the clock anyway. But Joe, why don't you show me show the folks and describe to the folks what you're drinking.
This is so much fun. Okay. What I have concocted here is I'll tell you the recipe. It is equal parts gin, sweet vermouth, and Campari with a dash of lemon juice and a little bit of a lemon on the rim, and then ice in it. A lot of people would call this a Negroni because that is the recipe for a Negroni.
It is.
But what
famously.
I'm calling it is the sour of ice Campari's you.
Oh my God. Quite the pun master. That's amazing. The sour, the sour of Campari's.
The sour of ice Campari's
you. Yeah, it does.
I'll text it to you.
You should. That.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so tongue in cheek. I love it.
And it tastes pretty good.
Of course, everyone loves a Negroni. So what I got here is this lovely green, thick, monstrous mess here.
I knew you were going to do the green goop.
I'm calling this, again, accredited to Ryan. I had a different name, but she's like, no, it needs to be a Barfy Mary. And this is essentially like a green tomato Bloody Mary.
Okay.
Roasted green tomatoes, cucumber, bell pepper, jalapeno, parsley, cilantro, blended up into a juice with some lime, and then you dress it up like a Bloody Mary with vodka, Worcestershire, hot sauce, salt and pepper.
Oh my goodness, so savory. Is it good?
It's delicious.
We're kind of killing it. Usually I make a drink and like visually it's okay and it tastes like shit, but like this actually tastes good.
Yeah, I mean, we may have hit it out of the park. We should submit it to those fake accounts that hit us up on Instagram whenever we post pictures and stuff. Like, post it to here. Like, now
Atlanta culture. It's a picture of a Negroni.
But it's not a Negroni. It's a
sour of ice Campari's you.
Damn right. Love it. Without it in front of my face, I can't remember it. Cool. Let's move on to the next bits here. What makes this movie a classic overall? So, first bit here, I want to talk about my connection with the movie when I remember first seeing it and all that. So, the first time I watched this movie, I think I was about 9 or 10 years old with my friend Mike at his house. We watched this upstairs in like their bonus room or something like that. I think it was well after midnight, and he and I were kind of going back and forth of like, should we watch it? We shouldn't watch it. Should we watch it? No, let's not watch it. It's the scariest thing I've ever heard of. Like, no way, we shouldn't watch it. Anyway, we did it. We watched it, but with all the lights on in the room, and the lights stayed on in the room when we went to bed in the bonus room. Would not turn off the lights. Refused until sun came up in the morning. But yeah, like always heard the hype around it, even at a weird young age. But that's just me. It tracks of this being like this forbidden movie that like you really shouldn't see it because it is so scary. It is this. It's not even taboo. It's just like you don't fuck with watching possession movies, that kind of thing, right? But I remember it absolutely captivating me, like holding my attention, but being so terrified by watching it.
Did the terror come from like any sort of like religious place, or was it more just like this is a scary movie and crazy shit's happening?
It's more of the latter. I didn't grow up terribly religious. I grew up like Catholic, light Catholic adjacent because of my Hispanic background. Like I remember going to midnight mass because there was a church across the street when we lived in Texas. But like I never like took my Catholic vow or whatever it is. Whatever you do.
The sacraments, yeah.
Or you drink the thing and you eat the stuff. I never did that, but I always kind of knew that like possession stuff was like kind of too real. So like, don't fuck with that kind of shit.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I remember also specifically too, in years later after watching it, in the dawn of the web 1.0, do you recall, or did you ever come in contact with like those trick websites where like eventually
it would pop up
her face? Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that, and for the first time, like seeing that and just being just like, holy shit, the internet is terrifying. But like it was famously like her face, her possessed face, and like a blood curdling scream as loud as it could possibly go. Like
I
at
mean,
the top of the they got a lot
they
of people.
really made the possessed face something. Like they did not cut any corners there. They
They
were
did
like, we're
not.
gonna make this look insane.
Legit and horrifying. So I remember that, but ever since then, like possession movies have always been the most scary to me. Anytime that I
Hmm.
watch any other horror movies, seconded only by home invasion flicks. So like those two, possession and home invasion, are the scariest to me because they're the most real in a
Hmm.
sense. Like this could happen. Not that I believe in uh demons or anything like that, but like there are actual documented stories and stuff like that, and it's just like
Hmm.
that's really terrifying. So that's what I carried with me for a while,
To
uh,
this day.
to this day. um but yeah, this time around, seeing it with you and those two other strangers in the theater,
They
I
seem
had
nice.
they did, right? I think they had a good time. I think they were like a father-son, which is cute. You love that.
That's sweet.
Um, I had a good time with this movie this time going around, this upteenth time seeing it. Of like I appreciated it for what it is, for what it was, the
Hmm.
cinematography choices, the score, and everything. I was like, this is just a really cool, well-rounded, crafted film.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's I mean, it exists in a time of horror when you have like Halloween and stuff like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I don't know when Friday the 13th first came out, but
that was
within
in
like
the '80s. Yeah,
that 20-year period, but this isn't really a slasher, and I think that's why it gets a little bit more recognition from like more official awards bodies and stuff like that, is because it, for an incredibly scary movie that is gruesome, it's not really bloody. And like the people die in this movie, but like it specifically doesn't show people dying a lot.
yeah. It's
A
usually
lot
like
of the
off
main
screen. Yeah.
kills in this, yeah.
Yeah, or off screen. Like they don't show you the director's body. They just describe it to you in horrifying detail.
Yeah.
He fell down all those stairs, but his head was turned around the other way.
I mean,
You know.
obviously, like all of the gruesome imagery is focused on this little 12-year-old girl, and they absolutely show all of that. So I guess
Mhm.
like it's balanced out in that way, but it is interesting to think of like the power of just like
Christ.
the power the power of Christ, like not showing you something on screen, but instead having you imagine it. And like,
Mhm.
is that a scarier alternative? Like, where we're basically just doing the work instead. And like, what we're imagining in our head is much more individualized and more scary than anything they could actually show us.
Yeah, 9 times out of 10, it's the things that they don't show you or that you can't see that are the most horrifying.
Hmm.
So, touching back on some of your points. So, the year after this, 1974, is when Texas Chainsaw came out. And then
Mm-hmm.
in 1978 was when Halloween came out. So, this was a pioneer, horror movie in a lot of ways for those kind of things. So, like 70s horror has like a unique kind of atmosphere to it. And this, plays a big part of it.
It
Um,
seems like this is like maybe when it crosses over into horror equals money at this point.
yeah,
Like
they're
you
like,
can really like have a big, huge box office from these movies.
are we on to something here? And the answer is yes. Money, money, money. So, Joe, before we get any too much further, I want to talk about some other things, but let's take a break. And I want you to give me the plot in 1 minute of 1973's The Exorcist.
I can do this. I'm not
Are you
scared.
ready? I'm not scared. Why would you even say that?
No. Who told you?
Because they're lying. All right, Joe, let's go in 3, 2, 1.
Okay, The Exorcist is about two girls who are fucking going through it. Ellen Burstyn plays Chris, who has a daughter named Reagan. Reagan finds an Ouija board in the basement and plays with it and ends up getting possessed. They don't really know what's wrong with her at first. They try to take her through a series of like medical exams. The doctors ultimately cannot figure out anything that's actually physically wrong, and Reagan's becoming more aggressive and more of like a little sarcastic shit and more violent. Eventually, the doctors refer her to an exorcism as more of like a mental thing to see if they can figure it out. And so that's when we learn about these two priests. One of them is having a kind of a crisis of faith, and he's kind of the main priest who comes in to help Chris out with Reagan. And then a second priest comes in kind of later in the game who has dealt with exorcism before in the past. And so together they perform an exorcism on Reagan, who has like full on become possessed by a demon. And they are successful, but they both die in it.
The end. Yeah.
I think I covered some major points, but there's obviously like some intense imagery that happens throughout.
She pisses on the ground.
Yeah.
There's a something with a crucifix happens, and it's madness. But you hit all the high points.
I think I think one of the things I want to talk about is like the different phases of Reagan in this movie.
Okay.
So like you could almost like down to the minute kind of like mark off almost like with like the makeup she has on her face, like how crazy things are getting. So like you start out and she's kind of a normal girl. She's happy. Her and her mother love each other. It's great. I thought like one of the emotional high points of the movie was like hearing her on like the recorded phone call when after she's already been possessed and like Chris is going in and like Chris or the priest, someone is going in and like listening to her on a call for like signs of how soon this was happening before. And she's just like, she sounds like a regular, like shy kind of immature kid. It was like real. It was super realistic in that way. And so you get that foundation of her as a kid. Then in what I think was kind of the scariest portion of that movie is that like hour or so of like in between. So you know that she's played with the Ouija board and shit's about to get real. Like things are happening. She's talking about like Captain Howdy or something like that, which is never a good sign. Do not ever let your kids have imaginary friends that are older men.
Definitely.
No. And and so you know something's wrong, and at that point it becomes kind of a suspense thing of like when you see certain things shining through, like when is she actually like a regular little girl and when is she maybe kind of hiding something. Like it comes out when earlier on in the movie her and Chris are kind of in bed together and they're having this like nice conversation, and she starts to ask her mom about like whether or not she like likes the director that she's working with on her movie. And you kind of almost like expect her to like start talking about like Chris fucking someone or something like that out of the blue, you know, like some crazy thing like that. And so there's like this creeping sense of dread, which leads up to the medical testing portion of the movie, which I thought was the most disturbing.
Definitely.
Like forget the exorcism. Like there's not as much makeup on her in this case. She still looks like a little girl, and they're like putting her through
the
intense
gauntlet.
like electroshock therapy. Like it's insane. There's a moment where like they have to like put a needle into her neck to get like some spinal fluid and stuff.
And it like spurts blood, and
it's like the real horror of this movie is 70s medical technology.
Right, because when they do like the MRI or whatever it is the loudest thing you've ever heard.
And it looks like they're hooking her up to like the atom bomb from Oppenheimer or something. Like it's insane.
It's very indicative visually of like Frankenstein's monster, like strapped to a board, and she's like raised up at an angle, and it's just like good.
Like I don't remember seeing this on House.
Where's Dr. House when you need him?
So like there's like an hour of that where it's just like it's constantly getting worse and worse, and she's kind of becoming more aggressive. She's like saying this crazy shit. And then at the house, she's coming downstairs to the party and like peeing all over herself. And then obviously there is a scene with a crucifix and a certain amount of blood.
They're like, you know what? We need to get some help here.
Maybe Tylenol is not cutting it. I don't know.
This 1970s Tylenol is just not enough.
And then, so what's the name of the younger priests in this? Karis,
the main priest. Karis.
So Karis comes in, and by the time he comes in, Reagan is kind of like fully taken over, and they're really starting to like lay on like the demon makeup at this point. She's got kind of like a sickly, pussy look to her. She's got these crazy contact lenses on that give her like a yellow eye. It weirdly levels out in terms of the horror for me at that point, because it's obviously like the suspense is gone in a way. Like we're in it, like, yes, let's do the exorcism, but also like her as the demon is kind of just this like sarcastic little shit. Like
Yeah.
I wanted to see more of her and the priests interacting because they're kind of having this like back and forth,
Yeah, a little
where they're like
tete-a-tete.
challenging each other.
Yeah.
And I feel safer in a way in that scene than watching this like little child actress get tortured with these medical devices.
Yeah, those scenes in particular were a lot of what disturbed a lot of the audience at the
Mm-hmm.
time, of just like, because like it was kind of taboo or whatever to kind of like portray medical stuff like that in such a passive way.
And again, like it's real. It's like you're saying, like
And it's real.
that's something that could more happen, like just in real life.
Yeah, and it is the worst thing you've ever seen, of just like you're actually kind of like sort of torturing this poor young girl.
Mm-hmm.
When we know, the audience, that like it's not anything with her brain or whatever. We know that she's possessed, because we know what happens at the movie. We know what it's called. But the ultimate failure of the medical community, of just like, well, I don't know, let's run another test.
Be different if this movie was called The Doctor.
The doctor is in. The
The
doctor is
Doctor's in.
So there's this thing I want to talk about, Joe. There was it's called the production curse about this movie.
Oh
Did you
no.
know anything about that?
Let me tell you what I know about the behind the scenes bits, and you tell me if it lines up. So I read up a little bit about behind the scenes here. I know that the director character in the movie, he like died while filming this. The one who she like kills first.
Mm-hmm.
Is that kind of part of the curse here?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Did anyone else die?
Yeah, let's run through it.
Oh no.
So originally this movie was slated for 85 days of photography, but ended up taking over 200 days to wrap,
Goodness.
by the events that follow. Of course, sending the budget $2.5 million over budget because of all the delays and things. Early on during filming, a bird flew into a circuit breaker on the house sets, which caused a fire that destroyed the whole set except Reagan's room.
See, that's Bible shit.
Yeah, I know, right. That's Revelations. That's Numbers.
Nar.
Nar. Ellen Burstyn fractured her tailbone in the scene where
Ooh.
she's like thrown back against the wall by Reagan, and that's the take that they use in the movie when
Oh
she actually
gosh.
breaks her tailbone. Lots of issues after the fact. Linda Blair fractured her lower spine during the bed rocking scene
I
because
would absolutely believe that.
because the rig that she was tied to was loose, not tight enough, and that take was also used. She developed scoliosis because of that injury. Let's see. A carpenter accidentally cut his thumb off.
Oh,
A
God.
lighting tech lost a toe in another accident. The actor who played the director died a week after filming his scenes.
Mm-hmm.
The actor who played Karis's mother died shortly after filming as well.
Oh, no.
Several other crew members or members of their families also died. Blair's grandfather died during the first week of production. Von Sydow's brother died after his first day of shooting. He had to leave and come back.
Gosh.
Paul Bateson, he played a medical tech in I think in the angiography scene, the one where they
Ooh, I think I do know this one.
He was a real convicted murderer
Yeah.
and discovered several years after the film's release. A real murderer was on set. Crazy shit. So the cast and crew were very wary of something seemingly supernatural going on, with like, we're filming this movie with all this deep religious shit and horrifying demonic possession, and all this weird stuff is happening. Friedkin asked Father Birmingham, the film's technical advisor, to perform an exorcism on set, but Birmingham instead opted to just bless the cast and crew.
He's not going to perform an exorcism.
Because a real exorcism would just only make the cast and crew way more anxious.
Like it from a religious standpoint, it would be better for him to just bless it. There's nothing to really exorcise in that case.
Like, some weird spooky shit's going on with the set. Like, I'm not going to do an actual exorcism. So yeah, like obviously, yeah, the cast and crew super anxious the whole time. But I mean, it all pays off in the end. They all took
Yeah.
home awards and stuff like that. So like, come on, don't be babies.
Burston's still around.
She's still around.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So why this movie is a classic, Joe. This movie, like I said, broke so many molds in many different ways, pushing the boundaries of modern horror film and just film in general. The sensationalism around the release is something that I hinted at.
Hmm.
Um, there were reports of people fainting, vomiting, and passing out during the movie, which you can
Which, like,
believe.
you cannot have better press than that.
I know, right? And a part of that, like, kind of fed the machine, and this is it kind of gives way for it being part of like the national conversation, movies doing that kind of thing.
Hmm.
Um, there were news reports and stuff of people having to be taken away on stretchers, and there's like a cool shot of someone on a stretcher in front of the movie theater being taken away. Some theaters have ambulances on call, numerous spiritual crises erupting, exorcism requests going through the roof. The person doing the data analytics on the Catholic Church side of just like, you got to see these reports, boss, like exorcisms through the roof.
We're up 200% in exorcisms this year.
How do we capitalize on that, Johnny? How can we
We
make
gotta
money?
sell T-shirts.
If we sell T-shirts. The power of Christ is compelling. Yeah. Reports of cinematic neuroses taking place due to the immense anxiety caused by the film's visual and loud, disorienting sound mixing and effects was also a phenomenon taking place. People just being so overcome by anxiety and just the heightened sense of fear, just taking over a person, which,
Well, one of the more interesting bits that I found in this movie was like how hard they try to like prove things medically and before it even becomes a movie about exorcism. Like they
Mhm.
really like cross all the boxes. They do every test that they can.
Yeah.
And so it really, and they even have like a scene where they're trying to explain exorcism and possession from like a medical standpoint, how it can be more of like a mental, like placebo effect, where you think you're being exercised, and so like you kind of stop harassing your own brain in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's interesting to have that in the movie also paralleled in the real world response to this movie. Like people are kind of like having mental conniptions over this movie, and there's also such a major religious aspect as well.
Yeah. That's a good transition here, Joe. I asked for your permission a couple
You
days
did.
ago.
You did.
So I have your permission. So here we are, Joe. We're in Joe's Catholic Corner. Is that all right with you?
That's all right.
Let us proceed. Joe, how did this movie hit you as someone who grew up Catholic?
Ellen Burstyn and I, one of the many things we have in common is that we both did grow up Catholic. And so I think coming to this movie as a Catholic person, it's like you were saying before, like when movies like this involve like the devil in a way, that's when it gets a little too real, and I'm like, no, thank you.
Maybe not.
I think the reputation that this movie had kind of helped me too. Where like I just know that this isn't some like underground videotape that we found in a box that's going to kill us. Like
We should do that.
This is a national, like almost beloved work of art in a way. And so it's been watched by so many people, and I wanted to be a part of that. Also, with the latest sequel that's come out, I've kind of been reading up on that. So many people are saying like this, you would think like Catholics would have like a major problem with this movie just because of like the subject matter, but in a way this movie is reaffirming a lot of stuff about Catholicism. Like the exorcism kind of does work, spoiler alert. So I'd be interested to be around in that time and see what the actual response from the church evolved into being. I know at first they were kind of like, no one see this because this is disgusting and horrible. Right. But I wonder if over the years they were like, is this kind of a movie that's kind of on our side in a way? Like, how many people are going to become Catholic because of this movie?
So the funny thing is that like they saw their numbers increase. The data analytics guy was like, "We're seeing numbers uptick, guys. Like,
Boss, you're not going to believe this.
turn it to channel 9." Yeah,
That thing, yeah, it's happening.
it's happening. The thing that we wanted, the thing that the big guy wanted, it's happening. Amazing. So thank you for that answer. Now, did exorcisms ever come up in conversation, sermons, or what have you that weren't related to this movie growing up?
No,
No?
not really. I
No.
think if you're ever talking about like the Bible and particularly like Jesus's life, there are a few moments of exorcism that are just like part of the stories, but it's not really. It's like him driving demons out, and that's kind of we press the button and it's done kind of thing. It's not really like,
Eject.
oh, this is like a multi-day month process that's going to physically drain all of us. So no, you don't really learn about the exorcism in Sunday school or anything like that. But it like so many things with Catholicism, something even as dark as this can be normalized because it does just go to show that there is like as much as there is a dark presence in the world, there is a light presence
Sure.
as well. There's like a balance there.
Absolutely.
And so like you can bring up exorcism in a Catholic church and it's kind of like bringing up bananas. I don't know.
It's not a taboo thing.
No.
It's just like, oh yeah, totally.
It's not really a regular thing these days. Like you don't have people really performing exorcism, which is why I'd be curious to see like what the latest is there. Like, do they keep rules? Like,
is there an app for it?
Right? Do they keep like practicing and stuff? Like, is anyone out there like still conditioned to be an exorcist? Like, I don't know.
Did the Catholic Church adopt a subscription to DocuSign to approve exorcisms on the fly? These are the questions that I want answered.
Yeah.
How much how big of a role does technology play?
The demon has to sign and like he'll hear back about like the results of the exorcism in 7 days.
Yeah. It's all built into our app. I exercise. All right, Joe, last question here. In Catholic Corner, and then we'll get out of here. Joe, do you believe in demons, possession, or exorcism?
Do I believe in demons, possession, or exorcism? I would say right now, probably not, but I tend to take like an agnostic view of these type of things. It's just like there's not really a way to disprove it. I told you I was watching South Park earlier. There's a funny episode where like they go to Kenny is sent to like a halfway house, or that's not the name for it, like a home for kids, and the people running it are like crazy agnostic, and so instead of being like super religious in a way, they make the kids like not really believe one way or another.
That's amazing.
It's funny. Anyway, I growing up Catholic, you can't really ever shake the burden of knowing about demons and stuff, and so that's still very much present. I think for a movie like this, though, the craft of it was so much in front of the screen that I was able to appreciate that more, as like just a work of film and stuff. Like, and so I enjoyed it in that sense. I thought I would be more like disturbed or like worried about the subject matter here, but I kind of enjoyed watching it.
So you slept fine that night?
I weirdly did. Yeah.
Weird. What does that say about you?
5 years ago, I wouldn't. I think I'm just dying on the inside.
There you go. You're desensitized by everything because of gestures around, because of everything. How about that? I want to talk about some iconic lines and scenes, and then I want to get some of your final thoughts. It's used in a lot of trailers of a voiceover of just, what a wonderful day for an exorcism. The way that they digitally kind of layered her voice with somebody else's to like make it seem super off-putting. I love it.
It sounds incredible, looks incredible.
Yep, they really did their homework.
There's one particular shot where I think she's talking to like the therapist for the one time they talk to a therapist, and that's when it's the only time when her face actually changes on screen. Like it goes from like Linda Blair to, and this is where I think they must have like overlaid Like
Hmm.
her eyes actually change and she becomes like the demon face. And it's
Yeah.
so cool and it's kind of seamless the way that they did it, knowing that it's not necessarily like CGI.
Yeah, there are several scenes throughout the movie where, okay, so the demon's name, they don't specifically say it. I don't know if they do in some of the bonus cuts or extended scenes. The demon that possesses Reagan is not Satan himself, not Lucifer, Morningstar, or anything like that.
Poo poo.
It's Pazuzu.
Hmm.
Um, are you not supposed to say it out loud? Is it kind of like a Voldemort sort of thing?
No.
No, it's totally fine. Um,
Is Pazuzu like a real like known demon, or is that made up for this movie?
I think it's a real demon. Like the statue and everything was like a faithful reproduction of it,
Mm.
that kind of thing. I think that's the story, and I think it's real. But there are several scenes where like there's like a flash in the corner, and you kind of see the face.
Hmm.
Um, like throughout the house and that kind of thing, just to alert you to the presence. Um, obviously, the power of Christ compels you has been used ad nauseum throughout a bunch of cinema and media. Father Marin's arrival scene is just so masterfully done. Getting out of the cab, the long foggy light coming from the house. That was the
Hmm.
first take, and they nailed it.
It looks real
Um,
good.
Used for posters and all that kind of stuff. I got a poster right here above my workstation of it. It's on so many T-shirts and that kind of stuff. Super iconic. The levitation scene towards the end, like when she breaks her binds and she's in the Jesus Christ pose,
Hmm.
rising up, her eyes are white. That was the most difficult shot to get. That was a custom rig underneath her. They had to hand paint the wires frame by frame, so it was seamless.
Oh
Just
wow.
hats off to the crew for that. Um, the head spinning scene is iconic. The vomiting the green, bile, whatever it is also iconic. And of course, you already touched on it. The medical test scenes being the most horrifying, realistic thing, and it's the
Hmm.
loudest thing you've ever heard.
Yeah.
It's the most off-putting thing.
I also wanted to touch on like I love the theme music for this movie. It
Oh,
sounds so cool. It's kind of like a crazy horrific carol of the bells in a way.
yeah, it's called
Um
Tubular Bells.
right, that's
Yeah.
what it is. I thought it would play more, but it really plays for like a second at the beginning and then the movie largely doesn't have music. Like
Mm-mm.
or I didn't really notice any.
Yeah, there's like
It's
some
kind
at
of
the beginning, some at the end, but it's largely just like Reagan raspily breathing, and they
mhm,
play Tubular Bells for a second, like you said, and that's about it, really.
yeah.
But it became just so iconic because it so juxtaposes, like the subject matter. It's kind of like a dinky, plinky, plonky kind of a sound. It's kind of
Mhm.
pretty, like you said. It's kind of just like a minor version of
You kind of
"Carol
just
of the
want to like
Bells."
bop to it, you know?
It's a bop, but
Um
pairing it with horrifying things, it makes it super cool.
I think one of the things that make this movie stand out as a horror movie too is the way that it'll just like cut away from things. Like I expected it to stay in these scary scenes for much longer when crazy stuff starts to happen with Reagan and the demon and stuff and like things are moving around and then like when it gets to the high point of each scene a lot of the times it would just cut away to something completely happening somewhere else like several
Mhm.
days later.
Yeah.
And so like it's almost like it's a lot of like sharp ups and then cliffs, sharp ups and then cliffs, and then the last 20 minutes are full exorcism.
Yeah, and I think, we talked about the pacing a little bit. I think that is, this movie is a good masterclass in that because you know what the movie's called, you know ultimately what's supposed to happen, and it's just this slow, terrifying build to that crescendo, and things just keep getting worse and worse and worse for them, and then you think there's going to be more. Like, you think it's going to be a deeper battle between the priests and the demon, but something's up as soon as Father Marin says, like, you step outside, I'll keep going. You're like, don't do this alone.
And he dies and doesn't even show his death. He kind of
Yeah.
just walks back in and he's dead. And like Chris isn't really present for the exorcism itself. Like I thought she would be more like part of the end game there, but it's more about these like two priests and their crisis of faith against this demon.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like I said, the title of the movie is The Exorcist, and
Hmm.
it is Father Karras's movie. He has the growth, the most complete arc
Hmm.
of, crisis of faith, putting it to the test, like putting on his super suit, like I need to go back to work and actually do it. wrestling with the guilt about his mom and all this kind of stuff. Being questioned by the super sleuth, you know.
Oh my god. I was about to say like the title of the movie is The Exorcist, but we know what it should be called. Cool ass detective.
Cool ass 70s detective.
Who is that guy? He kind of comes in like an hour and a half into the movie and I'm like, wait, is this guy like a main character right now? Does he get his own
Yeah.
spin-off? Who is this?
He should, yeah. Like this sequel, it's a buddy cop flick. It's The Exorcist and the Detective, you know.
He's kind of just like behind the scenes of everything that happens in the second half of this movie. He interviews everyone and he just wants someone to go to the movies with him all the time. I
Yeah.
want this guy's origin story in a TV show.
Yeah, we should pitch it. We should pitch it to Paramount or Warner Brothers and see what they say. Yeah, this movie is super cool. I'm glad you got to see and appreciate like the craft behind it, even if it isn't like outright terrifying. There are some things that kind of stick with you. There are some things to appreciate, you know, especially if you take a step back and you're just like, this was really groundbreaking. If I can put myself into 1973 shoes, this would rock the world of everybody. I think if they were to remake or do this movie again in modern times, it would be paced so differently. The focus would be on the shock of a possession and all that kind of stuff. It wouldn't work.
Well, I mean, funny you should say that because that's literally happening right now
With
as we speak. It's like it's the opening week of The Exorcist Believer,
yeah,
which has not been getting the best reviews.
because of all those reasons. It's like
Yeah.
it lost the magic of the original. Like, what are they doing? Uh, uh, um, you know, it's always a cautionary tale whenever they do a requel of
Mhm.
these movies that are 40, 50 years after the fact, don't really take into consideration any of the sequels that take place. Um, a lot of times they are misses. But that's all right. Joe, give me some of your final thoughts and closing arguments on The Exorcist.
Final thoughts. I think it's a masterclass in the form of cinema bent towards horror. So using visuals and sound sparingly but sharply is more than layering it on thick. You know, and so in a way, like if your movie revolves around like one single iconic thing, like the demon possessing Reagan, it can be so much more successful than having that, but like more. Like you see
Mhm.
in so many horror movies these days, where they just try to like overcompensate and have so many horrific things happening. Instead, having it have like a central horror can be a little bit more successful of a movie, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
I agree. A new perspective that that I now take with me when I see movies, ones that I've seen before or new movies, is the perspective of a parent.
Yeah.
Obviously, and there's different horror to that of just like I can't imagine having to watch your kid go through all this bullshit, and you're supposed to keep it together or not. So,
So you
um,
talking about the character in the movie or the parents of this child actress?
both honestly, I'm just like, holy shit, that kid's gonna need some therapy, and
Oh
I
yeah.
hope Linda Blair did get some after the fact because that's a tough burden to carry. Is putting on this flick.
I think she had some ups and downs, but she's doing all right now,
Yeah,
from what I can tell.
we love an icon. Um,
We love a sleigh.
we love a sleigh.
The demon slayed so hard in this.
Right? Yeah. Pazuzu is such a cool drag name too. Uh, I'm sure there's a drag queen named Pazuzu. If not, I'd be interested. All right, Joe, we're gonna do some end games. Bear with me because I finished this down to the wire. Let me
Mhm.
give you some backstory. I think subconsciously, what you told me last episode about your fever dream about putting on the podcast happened to me. I too had a stress dream about this exact episode last night
It's like the
where
ring for stress dreams.
we were recording side by side for a reason, for
Oh
for some
God.
reason. The videos weren't syncing up right. I didn't have my notes correct. I had my sister stand in for me while I tried to finish the game, and then when I tried to take over, it didn't work.
She's like, Justin, we're late for school, though.
Yeah. And the school bus is driving backwards, down the street. And I'm like, wait a minute. But I legit had a semi-stress dream. And all day I finished this video. I finished the game the minute before I jumped on. So if it's a little janky, that's fine. But here we go. We're in the end games. We're going to play something. This will be fun. Joe, we're going to play Goosebumps or Real News.
Hell yeah, we are.
Damn right. Did you watch Goosebumps? The
I
TV series?
did not until right now know it was a TV series. I read the books, though.
It was a TV series. Super fun. All right. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to read to you a sentence or two that is essentially describing the plot of a story from a popular kids book series from the 90s Goosebumps series, or it is 100% a real news story. Basically, are these real or fake?
Okay.
What I'm reading to you. We've got 10, and we'll just see how it goes. Number 1, a family is terrorized by a doll that's exhibiting supernatural tendencies, speaking a different language, moving at random places of the house on its own, and showing up after being thrown away. Real or fake?
This is Night of the Living Dummy, so I'm going to say Goosebumps.
This is very real. A haunted Elsa doll from 2013 from the movie Frozen was ended up. All these things actually happened. It started speaking in Spanish, even though there wasn't a setting for that. The family tried to throw it away, and it would show back up like on their bench inside their house. They eventually had to try to throw it away several times. They mailed it to a family friend in a different state, and that person strapped it to the front bumper of their truck, and they haven't seen it since. But that actually happened.
Yeah, it's also Night of the Living Dummy, so I will be suing you. But we can go on.
No, it's okay.
It's okay. He doesn't speak a different language in Night of the Living Dummy. So
he does not. You should have paid attention. Number 2, a family moves into a new house that they have mysteriously inherited. Ill things follow once the family meets the neighbors. Is that true or fake?
That could absolutely be true in a million cases. So I will say true.
It's fake. That's the Goosebumps book, Welcome to Dead House.
Justin, this is bullshit.
Number 3, a man went to a doctor for a follow-up kidney exam, only to find out that his kidney had been accidentally removed by another doctor who wasn't real and sold it on the black market. Is that real or fake?
I don't think they would have that in Goosebumps. I'm going to say real.
That's real. Police in Pakistan broke up a very real black market organ trading ring.
It seems a little too real for Goosebumps.
Yeah. A man and his family are searching for ancient manuscripts in a distant land from home. The children get lost in the woods and come across very strange things. Real or fake?
I'm going to say fake Goosebumps.
It's fake. That is Goosebumps, the legend of the lost legend. A family moves into their dream home only to be stalked by a crazed person who threatens their lives. Real or fake?
I will say fake Goosebumps.
It's real. A family in New Jersey had to flee their dream home after a person was making threatening phone calls to kill them all, calling himself the Watcher.
Goodness.
Yeah.
Is that what that TV show's about?
I think so. I think you're right.
There's a TV show about it, yeah.
I don't know. A local piano school keeps a spooky reputation for having students take a class and never leaving alive.
I really hope that's Goosebumps.
What if I told you it was real? It's
They need to
fake.
shut down this school.
They would immediately shut down the school. Yeah, that's fake. That's Goosebumps. Piano lessons can be murder.
Oh God.
Number 7, a man follows a student home from class, breaks into their apartment in the night, and attempts to cut a piece of flesh to consume. Is that real or fake?
That sounds too real again.
It is real. This was 1974 in Tokyo. The charges were dropped due to a mistaken charge, like a wrongful charge. But so he was let off. But that man later did commit murder.
Oh,
Number 8, a small family farm is terrorized by their seemingly alive scarecrows and other menacing things.
this is Goosebumps.
That's Goosebumps. That's fake. The scarecrow walks at midnight. The local librarian in a small town is suspected of mysterious things, monstrous things.
This is Goosebumps.
It is Goosebumps. The girl who cried monster. Yep. Just finished reading that one. That one's fun. Number 10, this is the last one. An anonymous child is suspected of being possessed by a demon. It later inspires a movie.
I'm going to say that this is real based on context clues.
Correct. Yeah, it's the exorcism we talked about, the exorcism of Roland Doe.
Roland Doe.
Rolling into dough is more like it. I hope he got royalties if he made that alive. I don't know. Probably not. Joe, that was The Exorcist. Hell of a way to start off spooky season by watching a beloved classic.
I would say so. I think we couldn't start at a higher high, and we are gonna, if I may, keep the spooky girl vibes going.
Yeah.
For part 2 of this miniseries. So, you know what I did? I
What'd you do?
looked back at our miniseries from last year. I didn't get a spooky movie last year. We
Nope, you
did
were a big pushover. I did 2 things
2 of
last year.
yours because you were Spooky King, and that's not happening this year. So we will.
I
we
am
will
still
be talking about what some people call, the crazy girl follow up to The Exorcist. We're talking about 2023's Megan with a 3. So this will be a movie that I have seen. I had a great time with it in the theater, and I am really, really excited for Justin to experience Megan.
Yeah, I've only seen the trailer. I know nothing else about it other than you telling me I had a blast at the theater. And
Do not learn anything more about it.
I don't want to. I skip all the TikToks that come across about it. But yeah, I'm excited for that one. We need a little levity. We need some fun, good time girl vibes.
Yeah,
In spooky season. I think that's what 2023 is all about.
we're gonna have a good time.
Yeah, we certainly are. But yeah, that's that. Stay tuned for that episode later this month, and yeah, we'll catch you guys later.
We did
Bye.
The Exorcist.
We did The
Bye.
Exorcist.